Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host, and this week in Reykjavik, it's a fun time of the year actually. It's the annual Airwaves Festival, the Iceland Airwaves Music Festival is happening right now all around the city where I live. I live right in the heart of the downtown area of Reykjavik, and once a year the town comes to life with gigs, daytime concerts, events of all kinds. And so if you walk around the streets of Reykjavik right now, this time of year, you hear music coming from every shop and every record store, every bar, clothes shops and everything. And they've all come to life. They've all got concerts going on throughout the day, which are free. And then in the evening, the music festival takes over. There are loads of fresh faces in town. There is a nice feeling around the town. There's lots of people around. There's a positive atmosphere. And so just before the winter kicks in, it's always a fun time of the year. So I've been out and about. I've been taking in a few shows. I've got a few friends in town. And it's nice. It's a nice time of the year in the city. But of course, as always, I've had some time for games as well. I've been playing a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to talk about some of it today. I'm going to talk about Rollerdrome as the featured game of the episode, the sci-fi roller skating shooter that went around earlier this year. I've been playing that on PlayStation 5 after playing the demo and liking what I saw. So I've got some thoughts about that to share with you. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some other games that I've been trying out. I've been playing a little bit of Darkest Dungeon on the Switch. I've been playing a little bit of Monster Train, the card game. Used to be on Game Pass, so now it's on iOS. So I've been revisiting Monster Train and enjoying myself. And I also dipped into a game just pretty randomly on Game Pass called ReCore. So I'm going to chat a little bit about those. But before I do that, it's the start of a new month. So it's fun to look at what's coming up in the month ahead. We've got some new PlayStation Plus games, we've got some new Game Pass announcements, and there is a whole bunch of games coming out this month. So a couple of days ago, actually, a game was added to Game Pass that I'd never heard of before. Some people have. I think this one has been doing the rounds for a while. It's called Ghost Song. It's an interesting looking 2D side-scroller with lovely art. It's actually made by a comic book artist who is making their first video game as Ghost Song. Sounds like it's been a bit of a labour of love, and now it's here. And I always love this kind of game, when a game comes to Game Pass that I hadn't heard of before, and it looks great. It's an indie title, and you just have it, you just download it for free, or as part of your subscription. It's my favourite thing about Game Pass, is getting nice little indie surprises. Not having to pay for them, and so you can just try it out, and if you like it, then play the whole thing, and if you don't, then it's no skin off your nose. You don't have to make a buying decision. So I was really happy to see Ghost Song come to Game Pass. That arrived today, I think. So I'm going to be downloading that one and playing it. Looking forward to that. And then on November the 8th, a big game, I guess. I've heard nothing but skepticism about this one. But on November the 8th, Sonic Frontiers arrives. That's the brand new 3D open world-ish Sonic game. If you've seen footage of it, it's all very brown footage for this game for some reason. But Sonic is running around in a relatively open-looking world, going high up into the sky, doing loop-the-loops, collecting coins, all the things that people know and love about Sonic. I'm really curious to see where the reviews land on this game, because there's been a lot of chat about this one. There's been a lot of skepticism, but there are also a lot of Sonic fans out there. I played Sonic as a kid on a Mega Drive, so I'm interested to see what the present holds for Sonic. So Sonic Frontiers is out on November the 8th. Also on November the 8th, another Game Pass treat, a game that I was curious about, but not enough to buy it. And then here it is coming to Game Pass, Return to Monkey Island. More games that I played as a kid, actually. I played Monkey Island 1 and 2 on the Commodore Amiga. If you've ever played those games, if you did play those games back in the day, then you will remember, like I do, that you had to swap discs constantly. It came on 4 discs, and if you went from area to area and back again, which you had to do for a lot of the puzzles, you were constantly taking discs out and putting them in again. Monkey Island 2 was even worse. 8 discs, I think, for that one. Constantly swapping them. That was my main memory of that game, along with the jokes and the pirates, was disc swapping. But Return to Monkey Island is a new game by the original team that made those games. It's a big tribute to those original games. It seems like it's a weird one on the timeline because there have been a couple of sequels made by different teams that didn't go down so well. So Return to Monkey Island is an interesting one. It seems to happen straight after Monkey Island 2, but I have heard that it actually does nods to the other Monkey Island canon games that weren't made by these guys. And it had really good reviews, actually. Not just nostalgic reviews, but people just seem to really like it. So I'm curious to see how the point-and-click genre has moved on, how the humour and the style of Monkey Island stands up. So I'll be playing that one on Game Pass on the 8th. The day after that, one of the biggest games of the year, God of War Ragnarok is coming, finally, to PS5 and PS4. I'm looking forward to this one. I've played probably 70% of the original God of War game. For some reason, I hit a bit of a wall in the back half of that game, but I loved what I've played of it. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Kratos and his son, I think Atreus. I really loved the sense of scale. Some of the battles in that game, fighting a dragon in God of War was one of the most spectacular boss fights that I can think of. And things like the World Serpent, where you just see these rolling hills shimmering in the distance with scales, and you realize that it is actually a serpent coiled around the world, as big as a mountain. God of War has a unique way of handling scale and spectacle and giving you the most cinematic and spectacular boss fights that really just get your blood racing. I mean, I remember laughing out loud several times in God of War boss fights because they're just nuts. Like, I haven't seen anything like it, really. So I think I will play God of War Ragnarok, and in fact, maybe across the next week, I will try and finish the original game and get that story conclusion in time for God of War Ragnarok on the 9th. The reviews are coming in for it, and they are highly positive, as expected. It's currently sitting on a 94 on Metacritic, which is just a couple points behind Elden Ring. So it's great to see that it's getting such good reviews. I'm excited to play it. It's a real spectacle. It's a real blockbuster. I like a good blockbuster AAA game now and then. So I'm looking forward to that one. On the 10th, another Game Pass treat, Vampire Survivors is coming. That's the indie sort of mob control shooter where you just walk around wiping out swarms of enemies that are just closing in on you from all sides. I'm looking forward to trying that one. I skipped it on Steam, but I will play it now that it's coming to console. So Vampire Survivors on Game Pass, that's great. On the 15th, there is an interesting looking game coming to PC called Floodland. It's another post-climate change city builder. I find these games so interesting. I loved, for example, Signs of the Sojourner. I love games that take into account the kind of climate situation that we find ourselves in and look ahead into the future and start to imagine what that future might look like. There's another game called Terra Nil, which has been doing the rounds for a while now that tackles this sort of thing. So Floodland and Terra Nil, interesting to have a pair of city builder or reverse city builder post-climate strategy games of this type. So I'll be keeping an eye on that one. I'll look at the reviews. I'll see if I can get, if there's a Mac version coming, I might well dip into it. Also on the 15th is Pentiment. This is that narrative adventure with a medieval style. The artwork is modelled on medieval iconography. It's got a super nice visual style. And it's by Obsidian, which is an interesting swerve for them. So I'll check that one out too. Also on the 15th is Somerville. This is one that a lot of people have been looking forward to. There have been a lot of teasers floating around about this one. 4 teaser videos that you can see on YouTube now. None of which tell you an awful lot about the gameplay, but all of which are dripping with atmosphere. And it's by one half of the Playdead studio who made Limbo and Inside. And it does seem to follow on with that style. So it looks like a 2.5D narrative experience. It looks creepy. It looks like you're being chased a lot of the time. It looks like you're trying to escape from some unknown threat. There are robots running around. It looks like a post-apocalyptic escape journey, maybe. Hard to tell exactly what Somerville is. I watched all of those teasers today, and I came away none the wiser about what the gameplay will look like. But I am curious to try this one. It is described on the Steam page as a sci-fi adventure and as a handcrafted narrative experience. So that's one to look out for. And finally on my list here, I have Harvestella. This one has been getting some mixed previews. It is a Square Enix published farming game meets JRPG. There is a demo of it on Switch now, and I kind of enjoyed the demo, but I didn't play all the way to the end, which I guess says something. If you're not going to get to the end of the demo, then are you going to get to the end of a long JRPG style adventure? But I did enjoy what I played. There's like a very soft, easy farming aspect to it where you're clearing land, planting seeds, then you go and do some dungeons and try and save the world in like an overblown JRPG story style. Then you come back and harvest all of your crops and upgrade yourself and that sort of thing. I think for a certain type of player, Harvestella might really, really hit the bullseye in terms of their interests. I am not that player, but I am curious about Harvestella, so we'll be keeping an eye on this one, on the critical reception, and what people say about it on Twitter and so forth, and I guess we'll see. It's an interesting one. So that's what's coming out this month. If I've missed anything off that you're looking forward to, feel free to tweet at me. I'm on Twitter as Gaming in the Wild. I like to hear what people are excited about and what people are planning to play. So do let me know if you think I've missed something off that list, and I will add it and I will take a look. But as for what I have been playing in the last week, I actually started Darkest Dungeon. This was a recommendation in the show's Discord. So thanks to Dave Jackson and Chonde813, both of whom have sung the praises of Darkest Dungeon in the show's Discord, and Grabloid as well. In fact, there's been a lot of appreciation for that game in the Discord, so it's about time that I checked it out. I'm glad that I did. It's a strange one. It's a turn-based party combat game, really. It has roguelike elements, but it's not a dungeon crawler by any means. I think when you say roguelike to a lot of people, they imagine Hades, they imagine Dead Cells. This has got as much in common with Slay the Spire as it has with those games, in that you do runs, you have a party of adventurers and heroes, and the scenario for this one is that you've gone to an estate with a stately home, a mansion at its heart, but it's in the middle of a dark, wild forest. It's far from civilization. It almost is like Transylvania. You know, in Dracula movies, when the carriage is thundering along the cliffside through this dark, bleak forest towards the creepy castle. It's that kind of vibe. And you, as the player, go to this mansion because there's kind of a rift between worlds there, and all of these eldritch creatures are slipping through. So it's got a bit of cosmic horror to it. It's got a bit of a Lovecraft vibe to it. It's all very dark. It's about staring into the void. That's the theming and the scenario of the game. But what that plays out as is you have a base camp. There are various things that you can interact with there. There's a carriage when new adventurers arrive to replenish your party and to improve your party. And then you have various buildings that you unlock, such as a shop and a blacksmith and an abbey and all of these different things that you can use to replenish and upgrade your heroes and your weapons and that sort of thing. And then you set out on a run, having assembled your party and made them as powerful as possible. And you go through these dungeons. It's like a 2D look to it. You walk through corridors, and then you get into combat, and these are turn-based bouts where you have 3 or 4 heroes on your side of the screen on the left, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 monsters on the right. It has a range system, so you really want your like melee people at the front of your party and your ranged or support people at the back of your party, or your magic casters, and you have to slug it out and try and get strategic. But there's an interesting element to this one that I haven't seen before, in that as your heroes descend deeper into these dungeons and do more and more runs, they get freaked out, and they have a kind of a psychological meter that tops out at a certain point. And back at the base, you have to take care of them. You have to put them into the bar to blow off steam there, or you can take them into the abbey so that they can give their confession and get advice and that sort of thing. It's all very macabre, but your heroes just get freaked out and you have to take them out of your party for a couple of runs. It's a clever way to make you cycle in new heroes and new types of character. There are lots and lots and lots of different classes that you can use. And the combat itself is fun. The scenario is fun. It's all very dark. It's all very macabre. It's all very well presented and quite strategic in the combat. There's lots to get your teeth into here. So I've enjoyed my time with Darkest Dungeon so far, and I'm going to keep playing it for sure. I've also been playing another turn-based game. I've been playing Monster Train once again. That game the card game that went a little bit viral. It was on Game Pass previously, and it came out on iOS. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, that's going to be the perfect place to play Monster Train. I enjoyed playing it on Game Pass, but for me, it wasn't the kind of game I want to be propped up in front of my monitor, focusing on using a controller. So playing it on a touch screen whilst kicking back, the same way that I played my 80 hours of Slay the Spire, just seemed perfect. So I have it on my iPad now, I have it on my iPhone. It's the kind of game that you can pick up and do a run in 10 or 20 minutes or less even. So this game is like a strange scenario. It's like a Snowpiercer style scenario where there is a train ploughing through a frozen world, except rather than holding the last remnants of humanity, this train is barreling through a frozen over hell, and it contains the last fragment of hell's fire. So you actually play as the demon hordes in this game, and there is a bunch of angels and holy enemies that are trying to come and extinguish that fire, and you have to guard it. And the way that you do so is that this train that you are on is actually a 4-story train, and you have to defend each floor by strategically choosing where to play cards that include demons, that include buffs, that include venting fire into the carriage to burn your enemies and that kind of thing. But if your enemies get all the way up to the top where your pyre is, then they can start attacking that. That's the life of your train. And if that gets to 0, then your run is over and hell's fire has been extinguished forever. So it's a really fun card game with different levels, like a tower defense-y sort of feel to it as well, with tough bosses, with deep strategy. And you build your deck as you go. You can unlock artifacts and cards on a run that will then be available in future runs. So there is a light meta progression element to it as well. And I think that now that Monster Train is on iOS, it's found a really good home that hits at least my sweet spot for playing these kind of games. So I'm looking forward to playing more of it, and if I do actually get into, a proper rhythm and play hours and hours of Monster Train, then maybe it will end up having an episode of its own, or I'll just mention it again as I progress with it. The final game that I want to mention in this roundup is a game that I picked up pretty randomly. It's another Game Pass game. I had it downloaded on my Xbox for quite a while, but for some reason I never opened it, and that is ReCore. Game Pass has the definitive edition of this game. It's a 2016 game, and I guess a lot of you will know about this one. This came during the time when I wasn't playing many games, so it was kind of new to me, but it does seem that it was a hype game at the time. It was Microsoft published. It was in development for a long time, but when it came out, it got critically slammed. On Metacritic, it has about 60. People complain about loading times, about bugs. And this isn't a weird one in a way, because it plays very well. Like as soon as I picked it up, I had a dash, I had a double jump. Firing the guns felt very intuitive. It was one of those games where you've learned the controls before the end of the tutorial. You just slide straight into it. So I really enjoyed it, but it looks older than it is. If you think that 2016 is a year before some, era-defining games like the Horizon Zero Dawns and Breath of the Wilds of this world, this one looks more like a PS3 game, maybe. So maybe it was just so long in development, and the development sort of straddled console generations. But it looks a little bit old. Maybe that's why the critics didn't like it at the time. But it's a pretty fun game. It's like a 3D Metroidvania where you're running through a sci-fi desert, trying to investigate what has happened to this world where you've come out of hypersleep and everything is strange. The robots are misbehaving. Everything seems wrong. It looks like there's an infection on some of the machinery that is around. And so you run around these different open areas. It's kind of wide linear. It's not fully an open world. Think Near Automata, where it's open world feeling, but there are loading screens between different areas. It also has dungeons, which are really cool, where you have to find items to unlock doors, you have to solve puzzles, do combat arenas, figure out traversal puzzles, and then you will get new abilities, which are really cool. So it has a Metroidvania style to it too. And I really enjoyed my time with ReCore. I played it for a good few hours. I think I'm 6 hours into it. And it was just like a comfort food video game. It reminded me a little bit of when I was playing The Gunk. That was a Game Pass game that had a similarly cozy and familiar feel to it. So I quite enjoyed ReCore. I tweeted out about it, and a few people came back and said that they really enjoyed it at the time. So I think it's got a little bit of a cult following, that one, and if you fancy a comfort food game one Sunday afternoon, then you could do worse than trying out ReCore to see what you think of it. I'm going to try and continue with that one. I have heard that the end game gets a little frustrating because it does that thing where you need a certain amount of cores to unlock each dungeon as you progress. And I hear that when you get to the end, suddenly the game is like, oh yeah, you need double the amount of cores that you have. And so you have to go back through the game again. I think that might have been one of the sticking points that the critics objected to. So we'll see, no pressure on finishing this one. If I get that far, I will update you. But before we get on to the Rollerdrome review, let me just mention that this is a patron-supported show. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/gaminginthewild, and for as little as $1 a month, you can become a member. You will get bonus episodes. You will get an invite to the show's Discord, where we talk about games, where people suggest games for the show, where people post sale tips and let us know what they're up to. We have a top 5s thread where we just discuss like the best Metroidvanias or the best horror games, or the best indie games that we're looking forward to, that kind of thing. It's a really good, lively place to come and talk about games, and you're welcome to join us. So it's patreon.com/gaminginthewild if you would like to support the show. I will say a big thank you to all my patrons this week because I upgraded some gear using that Patreon money. I got a better, newer microphone and a new boom arm so that I don't have to stoop over my desk using a wobbly little tripod to record the show. So a big thank you to everyone who is a current patron or has in the past been a patron. That money goes straight back into the podcast, and I really appreciate it. And with all of that said, let's move on and talk about the featured game of this episode, Rollerdrome. So Rollerdrome came out in August of 2022 for PC and PlayStation. I had heard about Rollerdrome before. It had been on, I believe, like a state of play, and it has a very eye-catching Sable-style visual style. I think did get some people's attention, but it wasn't exactly a hype game, and it did review better than I was expecting it to, and I think it caught some people by surprise. I actually played a half-hour PS Plus trial of this game, and you can do that if you have the premium tiers of PS Plus. It was enough to convince me to give it a try. It was basically just a tutorial in the first couple of arenas. It was on sale at the time, so it was an easy buy for me. It's developed by Roll7, published by Private Division, and it's designed by Paul either Rabite or Rabite. I don't know how to say that name, but Paul describes it as a mixture of Tony Hawk's and Doom, which should give you some idea of the action fest that is Rollerdrome. It reviewed well. It got 80 from critics on Metacritic and a 7.5 from players. GameSpot praised it for the tricks and shooting combo. The Guardian criticised the difficulty as being brutal, and I have to say I agree with both, and I'll be talking about the upsides and downsides of this throughout the review. How Long to Beat has it at 4 hours for the story, 7.5 for extras, and 15 for completionists. I think I completed the game in about 8 hours, and the developers describe it like this. Rollerdrome is a third-person action shooter that blends high-octane combat with fluid movement and tricking into a complementary and challenging whole, an adrenaline-pumping experience like no other. And my description on this one is that it's a stylish death-on-skates survival sports shooter that shines through its slick movement and satisfying gunplay, but is let down by didactic progression and bruising difficulty. So it's going to be a bit of a mixed review, this one, but there is a lot to like about Rollerblade, and one of the best things about it, I think, is the scenario and the presentation. You can hear from the music, this great motoric synth-pop soundtrack that it has a style that you don't often see in video games. It's very 80s, this one. If you've seen the Rollerball movie with James Caan, I believe was in that one, and old sort of future sport movies, and like games like Speedball 2 that I played when I was a kid, this game seems to be in that lineage. The future sport genre, pre sort of Rocket League, was all about this kind of thing, about wearing a helmet and getting involved in high speed Running Man style stuff. I guess it has little in common with the Hunger Games as well, in that you are an underdog heroine entering like a place where you're set up for failure, basically. So the scenario for this one is that it's set in the year 2030, and Rollerdrome is a televised life or death survival sport, a lot like the Hunger Games, and it's broadcast as mass entertainment by the sinister Matterhorn Corporation. You play as Kara Hassan, who is a new challenger entering the arena. And the way that this sport works is that you roller skate around rinks that have half pipes, that have ramps and all that sort of stuff. But as well as roller skating around with your elbow pads and your skates and your helmet, you also have guns, and there are people in the rink that are going to try and destroy you. They're called the house guards, and they try to club you, they try to shoot you, they try to snipe you, explode you, bat you. They're really like a brutal set of enemy players, and it's just you against them. So you are the sole combatant in the arena. There are waves and waves of house guards. After you wipe a couple out, then a couple more appear. And they appear in increasingly more complicated configurations. So there is like a puzzly element trying to figure out your way around the arena to wipe out all the house guards. But you have an arsenal to fight back that keeps on growing. You start off with a pair of pistols that fire quite rapidly. You'll get a shotgun, you'll get more advanced weaponry that I won't spoil. And in order to reload, you have to do skate tricks. This is pretty cool. I like the fact that if you run out of ammo, you have to shoot off the edge of a ramp and spin in the air. So you get to do these Tony Hawk style tricks, you get to do grinds, nose grabs, and all of those different kinds of stunts that you'll be familiar with if you've played any skating games. In fact, the developer of this game also developed Ollie Ollie World, so if you've played that one, then you'll know that they have pedigree in this area. So it's a really interesting mix of shooting, of fast traversal, of trying to control the arena. There's also a great dodge that you're going to be making a lot of use of. So sometimes you'll see a red light strafing across the arena, and that's the line of sight of a sniper. They try and lock onto you, and you have to dodge. You can also dodge through grenades, you can dodge through fire, and so there's lots of speed skating, gathering speed, dodging, grinding for ammunition, and then shooting up into the air from a ramp and taking people out. There's also a super cool slow motion mode where you can slow down time for a limited period on a cooldown. And there's an auto lock-on in this game, which is a great decision. So wherever you're looking, you will lock on to the nearest enemy, and you can flick between enemies. Different weapons have different effects on different enemies. So it's very fluid, it's very propulsive, it's very fast-moving. And there's a lot to keep you busy. It feels kind of intuitive to control. They've done a great job with the skating. And so right from the off, this is a really propulsive, exciting pulse racing game. It's super stylish and it just feels great to play. And for a game like this, the movement is very important, and it does feel very fast-flowing. Sometimes Kara will skate backwards. As you turn, she moves gracefully, like a skater. If you hold down the X button to crouch, you can release it to jump. You hold the direction buttons in the air to do different kinds of tricks. They get more complicated as you progress and learn new tricks and spins and poses. If you're going fast, you can really shoot high up into the air, and the camera swings. You're looking down at the ground and seeing Kara hold an amazing pose in air and then spin to reload. You hold triangle if you're near a rail, and you will grind that rail. You can grind for the whole rail. You don't have to do balance or anything like that, so you can concentrate on your shooting. You hit circle to dodge. You get perfect dodge if the timing is spot on. And you can't fall over in this game. You can only stop, really, and stopping is punishment enough, because if you're not moving, then you're an easy target. You can also fall out of bounds. You just respawn instantly back in the arena. So this is a game that is designed for you always to be moving. It is propulsive by nature, and that's something that I really appreciate. And I think a lot of good decisions were taken in the combat as well. I think the auto-targeting is actually a pretty big call, but it really helps this game. So when you're facing them, your crosshair just snaps onto the enemy that's closest to where you're looking. The bullet time is amazing too, so you hit L2 to slow down time for just a few moments. And as you're spinning in midair sometimes, having flown off a ramp, you slow down time, and Kara is spinning. You can get the crosshairs onto an enemy, take them out, then time speeds up and you land again. It's incredibly satisfying. The tricking to reload is another great decision. It really makes you take part in the tricking, so there's a balance to be found between these balletic high-speed tricks, which are very satisfying, and the shooting. Like, you can't do one without the other. Your pistol will have 12 rounds, the shotgun only has 4, like a grenade launcher later on will only have 2, and you have to pull off tricks to reload, otherwise you are just out of ammo. So you'll end up doing attack runs, a little bit like going in on the Death Star if you're going in on a powerful enemy, and then peeling off again to go and trick and hide and dodge and reload, and then going in for another attack run, chaining attack runs between enemies. It's got quite a satisfying rhythm to it, this combo gameplay where you're spinning in the air, taking down enemies and reloading, and then going in to fire again. It lends itself to lots of moments of Matrixy brilliance, where you're shooting incoming rockets, jumping over mines, dodging through a sniper fire, and then taking someone out, going off a ramp and shooting someone down from 10 meters in the air. All very, very satisfying and cool. And that's the game, really. You're basically trying to stay alive through a run, keeping moving, trying to beat high score. Like, you get scores based on time and so forth, and your performance. And there are optional goals for you to hit, e.g. shooting 3 rockets out of the air, wall riding on a cable car, hitting all the trick points and doing a specific trick and that sort of thing. And I have to say that that's where the problems start to come in with this game. It turns out that those optional goals aren't really that optional. So you might think that there's 10 different optional goals and you get a performance rundown after you've survived a run. You'll see some green ticks appearing in boxes, like if you did manage to shoot 3 mines or to take out a sniper from above because you jumped so high that you were above them, that sort of thing. But it turns out they're not optional. It turns out that to unlock the next round, not only do you have to survive the quarterfinal or the last 16 of this tournament, but you have to have accomplished a certain amount of those goals too. And that kind of crunchy progression really took the wind out of my sails with this game. It reminded me a little bit of, say, in Super Mario 3D World, we have to have a certain amount of stars to unlock a boss level. But it was much more punishing than that. I felt like in Mario 3D World, you naturally picked up almost the right amount of stars to progress. In this game, you really don't. And the fact that there is like a dramatic thrust to the game, it has a story. You are Kara Hassan, you have entered the Rollerdrome tournament, and so if you progress past the quarterfinal just by the skin of your teeth, with your last couple of bullets on your last little bit of health, and you manage to take out that last enemy, and you're feeling that sensation of victory and looking forward to progressing to a new arena, and then it turns out you just have to repeat it again and again and again, doing these small didactic tasks. And it really was just a depressing progression structure that they put into this game that just squashes the vibe, squashes the feeling of the game. You can turn it off, but I just wonder why it's automatically on, because it just kills the game to some degree. And that was the first warning bell for me. A lot of my criticisms of this game are elements of the game that you can mostly turn off, but the way that it is set up when you first play is pretty obnoxious in some ways, and I found that as I progressed through the game, I had to go back into the assist menu again and again and again to try and tweak different elements of the gameplay, to tweak as the difficulty ramps up, which it does pretty intensely. I had to go back in until I was playing on a very easy mode to get past the intensely difficult semi-final and final of this game. And where there were good decisions made constantly in the gameplay, in the movement, in the reloading, and all of that cool stuff that I was throwing praise on a moment ago, I think in the actual progression and structure of this game, they've made a lot of very bad decisions that unfortunately took the wind out of my sails with this one. And I have to say that even if you do have to do a lot of tasks, busy work style tasks to get through to the next round, it doesn't help that they're a little bit dull. Like if you have to get like a nose grab next to the blue stunt point and then a safety grab or a 520-degree safety grab in front of the yellow stunt point or whatever, then you're learning these barely different looking tricks that each have their own controls to try and just do a sort of a joyless run to tick a couple more boxes so that you can get onto the next level. It really is mystifying to me why this is a feature of the progression in this game, given the propulsive nature of the gameplay and the tournament nature of the game, of the Rollerdrome TV show game, the meta game. It's a little bit like if England got through to the semi-final of a World Cup, beat Germany, were celebrating getting into the final, and then someone came down and said, no, just joking, you have to play Germany again, but this time you have to get 10 through balls, 15 throw-ins, 3 corners, and 2 goal line clearances in order to get through to the final. Can you imagine? It's just not how these things work. So that was a really strange one. The second big sticking point I had with this game was the ramping of the difficulty. It starts off really cool. At the first couple levels, the enemies are quite spaced out, and they spawn in a way that feels manageable. But it ramps up really fast, and it gets to the point where waves of enemies are spawning so thick and fast around the quarterfinals and onwards in such numbers and in such varieties that you have just too much to deal with to be able to actually play the game. I found that it became unplayable, and that's because in order to trick you to reload, you can't have 10 enemies shooting at you. Like you have to have a little room to breathe in order to reload in this game. And if you're surrounded by enemies that are all coming at you at once, which is what happens, then you can't reload really. So you end up just getting hit a lot. You end up trying to take out grunts in order to pick up health and focusing on that. You spend all your ammo picking up health, and then the powerful enemies are coming at you again. And it just got a little silly. Like I stopped enjoying it. There were incoming rockets to shoot, people throwing mines in front of me, snipers to dodge, grunts at the same time, lasers tracing your movement, and very mobile troops that can move around the arena all at the same time. And I found that it suffocated the best moments of the gameplay in Rollerdrome, which is when you're free skating between enemies, pulling off tricks, reloading, going in another attack run. So being overwhelmed in this game was just no fun at all. And I do think that maybe it's intended that you learn the spawn points of enemies in order to take them out in a certain order. But if that is the case, then it's not indicated in the gameplay. The HUD and the UI don't show you when enemies are spawning around you. And so I would have found that to be a pretty tedious thing to do, like to literally learn the arena and go for perfection runs, having memorized the spawn order. That's not where the fun in this game is. It's in dodging, it's in reload tricks, and that sort of thing. So I could be playing wrong. I did listen to a review by Skill Up, a reviewer that I really like on YouTube, and Ralph actually described pretty much playing it the way that I didn't want to play it just now, so learning the spawn points around the arena, and he seemed to really enjoy that, but to me that's just super tedious, so we have a difference of opinion there. If there is a right path through a level, then I think it needed to be included in what the game tells you a little more. But ameliorating some of these things that I've talked about is the assist menu, and this is a great inclusion. It allows you to do things like have endless slow motion, or to have infinite ammo, or to turn down the amount of damage that Kara takes and deals. So there is a really good accessibility menu in here called the assist menu. It's a good quality of life inclusion, so you do get the impression that perhaps the studio were aware of what I'm talking about, and they did include those options for players that just wanted to play the game and have fun. But there is definitely a feeling that you're not meant to play that way. For example, every time you finish a level, if you have any assist menus turned on, there is a really obnoxious flash that comes up on the screen saying your time has not been entered onto the leaderboard because you used assist mode. So the game kind of makes you feel bad for using assist mode, which is really annoying, man. Like, you finish a level after an intense battle, even if you used assist mode, you just don't want to get a slap from the game saying, yeah, your time didn't count, your score didn't count. Just bad vibes. So you get the sense that there is an intended way to play and that you're being pushed towards that intended way, but that the intended way isn't the fun way, and that the fun of the game has been lost somewhere in the structure of it. So there is some really frustrating elements to Rollerblade, but to round out this review, I will go through the good points and the bad points once more. So I would say that the good points are the visual style. If you've played Sable, you will have seen this block-coloured, line-drawn, flat-shaded graphic style, the Mobius look, like a moving comic book. Like, this game looks great. I love the animation. I love the graceful way that Kara Hassan moves. They have managed to capture what it looks like, and not that I roller skate, but, you know, I did get a taste of what it might feel like to roller skate. The fluid movement is really cool. The music is great. I love the overall aesthetic of the game. I love the visual style. I love the music choice. The intense 80s synthwave music is pretty good. And it really adds to the excitement as you're going through these levels. The kinetic movement is amazing. The flipping, the grinding, the slow motion, the shooting, the doing tricks. I really like the automatic aiming. I really like what they've done with the combination of tricking and shooting. It's an unlikely combination, but it works really well. I love that you have to flip between attack runs and reload tricks, so you have to explore all avenues of the game. The auto-targeting is amazing. The slow motion feels glorious. It's really well implemented. The fact that you can't fall down is nice. Loads of good decisions made in the moment-to-moment gameplay. And you really do get to feel like a genius when it's going well. So if you do a series of takedowns, shoot rockets out of the air, jump, dodge, flip, reload, and take people out, you just feel great. So when you're really in the flow of this game, and when the game is allowing you to play it, then it feels fantastic. It's full of acrobatic badassery. It's just very fun in the moment-to-moment. But yeah, those decisions that are good in the moment-to-moment gameplay, the movement, the shooting, are mirrored by bad decisions elsewhere. I think the narrative dissonance of the structure that I described, of having to replay tense levels in order to do a tick list of tasks, is nonsensical. I think that the difficulty is ill-judged. The base difficulty is a problem in this game, and it almost tanks the game entirely. I ended up with so many assist modes switched on that the final felt a little joyless. It was like I'd had to drain the challenge out of it just to get through it, because the intensity of the enemies was too much to be able to play the game in the intended way, for me at least. I think the composition of the waves is way off. I think that it's too easy to get overwhelmed, and it can render the game unplayable at times. I think that the story is cool. I like the scenario, but it felt a little underexplored. And I understand that they wanted to keep those sections short, where you are, for example, sitting on a train on your way to the next round, or in the changing room. There is like an overarching sinister plot in which Kara is perhaps being exploited somewhat and that kind of thing. I would have liked a little more of it, though. I know that they wanted to get you back into the action, but I quite enjoyed those sections as a little break from the action and as a way to flesh out the world. So yeah, just to round out the review, I did really enjoy the gameplay. I really enjoyed the shooting and the tricks. It's slick, it's fun, and there is a good game in here with moments of brilliance. But I would say that the overall experience for me was hamstrung by all of that other stuff that I've talked about. And so it kind of roars out of the traps, this game, and it feels great, but you end up tripping over and falling flat on your face. The good news is that if you have a PlayStation and you have PlayStation Plus, you can try out the demo and choose for yourself. I did play the demo and I did buy the game based on that demo, but you can probably get a feel for it. If you're playing that demo and you think that you could handle a lot more difficulty and a lot more enemies, then maybe this is the game for you. There are some people out there that really like it. As I have said, it reviewed well. Players liked it to the tune of 7.5 on Metacritic, critics to 8. So there is a good game in here. Maybe it's the one for you, maybe it isn't. It wasn't for me. That's Rollerdrome. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed those reviews. I don't like to deliver a negative review, really. It's not my favourite thing to do on the podcast, but Rollerdrome is the game that I've had the notes sitting there finished in my notes for a few weeks now, and so I think it's only right that I offer a critique of it. I would love to hear what you think of Rollerdrome, if you think that I should just get good, or if you agree that it's a little bit crazy hard at times. You can find me and talk to me on Twitter at Gaming in the Wild, on all of the social media. You can come and join the show's Discord if you would like to become a patron. That's at patreon.com/gaminginthewild. If you've got games that you would like to recommend, if you've got games that are coming out this year that you're excited about, or games that you would like to hear on the podcast, new or old, please do give me a shout. I always love to hear from people that are listening. I'm not sure what next week's episode will be about. I'm playing ReCore still. I'm playing Darkest Dungeon. I'm having a great time with Monster Train. I've got a few more games on the slate as well. I do want to try and get through God of War, and I've never done an episode about the 2018 God of War, so maybe I will try and do that. That would be very fitting, wouldn't it? Right before Ragnarok comes out. I've also got a few codes lying around. I've got I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, the narrative game that I've been intending to play on PlayStation for a while. And then there are those new Game Pass games too. Wow, always so many games. We are living in a golden age, we really are. So I'm not sure what the next show will be about, but I will be back next week with a new episode. Thanks very much for listening. Take care of yourselves and each other, and bye-bye for now.